through the part on, let me finish up kind of just on some things on what we were talking about in courtship, and then we'll go on into some questions. Yesterday I gave you the perfect case scenario. If both the man and the woman, their parents, were extremely godly and aware of these things. In most cases, parents really just drop the ball on this and don't involve themselves at all in these types of things. Again, I would recommend a book, Her Hand in Marriage. I think it's by either Douglas or Nancy Wilson. Her Hand in Marriage is a wonderful book that describes some of these things that I've been talking to you about. But let's look at some less than perfect case scenarios. Let's say that the young man has gone off to college and he's a gazillion miles away from his parents, and the young girl is also at college, a gazillion miles away from her parents and the authority of her father. And so what then? Well, it's a predicament, a great predicament, that and someone could argue for and against many, many things that are involved with someone going away to college. But I think that in that case, what ought to be done is this. Once you move away from home as a Christian, you will become involved in a biblical fellowship somewhere, in that place where you are living. If you're not, you're in disobedience. And if you continue in that, it's evidence that probably you've never come to know Christ. A genuine work of salvation's never been done in your heart. If you're a genuine Christian and you leave home, you're going to find another fellowship. And in finding that fellowship, there's a thing throughout the New Testament, we don't have time to go into it, but it's pastoral authority of elders. In the New Testament, there wasn't just a main pastor. In the New Testament, there were elders, a multiplicity of elders, men who pastored the church together, that shepherd the people of God. Shepherding means more than doing administration. As a matter of fact, administration is a very small part of shepherding and the pastoral work. But because our ideas of church have become so you could say twisted. Usually a church is built upon a pastor who preaches, spends a lot of time doing administration, worrying about the windows and whether or not the grass gets cut. You have a body of deacons who are acting more like elders even though they don't qualify as elders, or they're not really involved in the church. And they're not doing the job of a deacon, and they're not qualified to do the job of an elder, and everything just kind of falls apart. But what you're supposed to have is a group of men who are called by God and gifted by God, according to 1 Timothy chapter 3, to shepherd God's people. And they're primarily to be involved in shepherding the spiritual aspects of the church, preaching, counseling, shepherding, not only on a congregational basis, but on an individual basis. To take care of all the other activities in the church, God has given deacons. And that's what they're to do, to take all that weight off of the pastors so that the pastors can have time to do this. And what would be this? Let's say that you've moved away from home and you found somebody that you think maybe is God's wife for you. And you call your father. He's a long distance away. He can't really get as involved as he would like to. She calls her parents possibly. And there's just, the parents are too far away. So hopefully you're in a local congregation with biblical elders who are going to get involved. And you go to your father, yes, you call him on the phone, you even have him come down to the university or whatever. But you also have, in his absence, godly elders in the church to whom you're going to go, and they can counsel you. And not only can they counsel you and fulfill the role of a father, in a sense, but they can also set up the parameters for your courtship and set the rules down. Primarily the main rule, which is you shall never be alone with that girl until the day you marry her. And so you're allowed to get together, you're allowed to do things, but never to be concealed alone so that you might fall. And that's in a less than perfect situation. Now, Let me just go back with a short review, because possibly there's some of you here who weren't here in the other days and you're wondering, what on earth is this man talking about? Fact of the matter is, the Bible teaches that we are to flee immorality. It is not a case, and we are to flee youthful lust. It is not a case of whether or not you can be spiritual enough to date a girl a long time without falling. The Bible says simply you can't. The Bible says we are to flee youthful lust, and that recreational dating is totally unbiblical. It is totally wrong. The only reason you begin to think of someone of the opposite sex is because you have intentions of marrying them. And you don't even think about someone of the opposite sex until you fulfill the requirements of biblical manhood or biblical womanhood. In the case of the young man, it is this: can you spiritually lead a woman? Can you protect a woman, have the integrity and strength of character to do so, and can you economically take care of her? In other words, if Dad's paying your car insurance, forget about even looking at a girl. It's reaching manhood before you begin to do the things that only men are supposed to do. And then if all that has been fulfilled and you do see someone, you begin to pray about them, and you think they might be the person, that it is not your right as a young man to go to that girl and ask her out on a date. No more, and even less than it is for you to just come into my driveway and take my car. That girl is under the authority of her father. And if you're going to honor her father, you're going to speak to him first and get permission from him. And if he grants that permission, then parameters have to be set up in your courtship to keep you from falling, to keep you from entering into sexual and emotional activity that will cause you to be bound together in a way that you should not be bound. And this is all for your protection. Now, I heard a man say something a while back, and it was very, very interesting. The way he said it was very, very funny. He was talking about setting parameters for his son and helping him through this period and everything. And someone asked him, said, "Well, don't you trust your son?" And the father goes, "Well, no, I don't trust my son. My son knows I don't trust him." She said, "Well, what kind of relationship was that?" He goes, "I don't trust me, and my son knows that." It's not a case of, don't you trust me to be alone with a girl? The answer is, God doesn't even trust you to be alone with a girl. And that's why He builds parameters around it and says, don't do it. It's not that He doesn't love you. It's not that He doesn't care for you. And it's not that He won't entrust great things to you. He's simply saying, in this certain area, no. Because you're not made in a way, well, let me put it this way. You're alone with a girl enough time that you're attracted to, you will fall. You will. Some of you already have proved that. You will. No matter how much you pray, no matter how much you fast, no matter how much you read the Word, no matter how many Christian concerts you go to, you won't remain pure. And that's why these parameters are set up and have been set up, not only by Christian people, but in various cultures throughout history. It is just known. You cannot do this. Now, the only place where you can is a pagan culture that says it's okay to have sex at 12 with as many partners as you choose until the day you decide to get married. But you didn't learn that from Jesus. Now, first of all, we'll address for just a little while, for just a moment, questions dealing with this topic. Okay? Dealing with this topic. Okay, does anyone have a question or comment? Yes? I think it's either Douglas or Nancy Wilson. You can get the book from Vision Form. I think it's Vision Form. Is it Vision Form or Veritas? Veritas. You can get it from Veritas Press. Veritas. A lot of stuff they have on there about the family is very, very good. Theologically, I do not agree with them. They are kind of there's some theological things there that are kind of, especially with regard to the structure of the church, the relationship of civil government and things like that. I think they go overboard on that. But as far as the family and marriage, they've got some really good books. And on children. Yes?
As far as you're talking about the people that you previously dated will be there, like at your wedding day. What about forgiveness? What if you've gone before God and repented of these past things?
Mm-hmm. Well, people who have had... Did everyone understand the question? Hear the question? The question was... Paul, you talked about the fact that if you've had a lot of relationships, then when you go to your marriage, all those people that you've had relationships with, they're kind of there with you at the wedding. They'll be involved in your marriage. And what about forgiveness and God's healing in this? Well, first of all, let's look at something. The emotional aspect of a man is just as real as the physical aspect of a man or a woman. Let's take a young boy in college who is immoral, has sex one night with the wrong person and gets AIDS. Goes to God, becomes a Christian, goes to God for forgiveness. He still has AIDS. What you need to realize is that there is healing in Jesus Christ. But here's something that your Christian culture has sold you, and it's a pack of lies. That Jesus is the fix-it-all. That you can basically live any kind of life in the world, go to Jesus, and He'll fix all the scars, fix all the problems and everything. No, there are scars that you will carry with you all the days of your life. And they work as reminders. And although God can bring great healing and God can do many things, at the same time, we have to not presume upon God that, I can enter into these relationships and then later on God will just take care of them. No. Not at all. We carry, I could say scars, I could say residue of disobedience. And it can affect our entire life. Men can fall. For example, I could fall. And if I fell, is there redemption for me? Yes. Is there hope for me? Yes. Could I still be used of God? Yes. Would it be the same? No. Would I carry it? I knew a man who was mightily used of God and saw God do things that very few men in this age have ever seen. And he fell. And years later, he said, "It is still as bitter as gall." And so we have to be very, very careful. Did that answer your question? Okay. Yes. Okay, that's a great question. He asked me that last night, and I says, "Man, ask me again today so that we can talk about that." Here's the problem. Okay, if I'm not supposed to approach this girl, at all, then how am I supposed to figure out whether she is even a girl that I'm supposed to be praying about? And if I do get a little close to her to see, how can I be sure that I don't get so close to her that I do create an attachment with her and it begins to cause problems? Well, first of all, one of the things that you need to see is you don't need to be into a intimate relationship with someone to know that person. Because what you're looking at, if you are a Christian, what you're looking at is virtue and character. For example, guys, let me tell you something. Girls, let me just fill you in on something, okay? If you're around a guy who smells bad, doesn't shave much, looks ratty all the time, and everything else, after you marry him, do you think it's going to get better? It's going to get 1,000 times worse. Okay? Because he's looking his best now. I mean, he's trying to catch you. When he's got you, it's over. That's a tendency in everyone. All right, so what you need to realize is that if young man, if there's a girl over there and you begin to just pray and watch her life and pray, you're going to get a better picture than if you were to draw near and say you're interested. Why? You're going to see her as she is. She's not going to portray anything before you. There's not going to be any falsehood, any fake. She doesn't know. She's just going to be who she is. It's like, when a girl, you see a guy that you really think's nice, but one day you get up late for a test and you run out, outside of your dorm, and you look like Godzilla in a dress, and you got flip-flops on, and your hair's going like Medusa, and who do you run into? That guy, and you just want to crawl into a hole. All right, well, guys, it's good to see her like that. And if you don't draw near, you'll have a chance of studying and looking at her character, the way she deals with other people, the way she walks, as far as her Christian life. Now, at the same time, guys, this is very important. Guys will get into a relationship with a girl, and after they get in that relationship with a girl, they realize this is not where I want to be. And you know what they'll do? Instead of being man about it and saying, I made a mistake, they'll blame it on God. They'll go, I really like you, but I've just been praying and God's telling me this is not His will. What they do is they blame it on God. Don't do that. Don't do that. You made a mistake. Say you made a mistake. Ask for forgiveness. Now, another thing, guys, that you got to be very careful about is this. A girl, she's not going to listen to what you say. She's going to listen. She's going to look at what you do. For example, I have known guys that, they have this girl who's just their friend. I mean, their bud, and they're always just going around and everything, and it's just their bud, and the guy tells her all the time, now, we just study together and stuff. Now, there's nothing romantic. I'm not interested. This is not going anywhere. We're just friends. And the girl says, of course not, of course not. But what you've got to realize something, even though you're telling her all the time that this is just, this is just friends, this is just this, and you're not interested in marriage, and you're not interested in all this stuff, but you keep coming back to her door. You keep calling her. She is not going to listen to what you're saying. She is going to respond to what you're doing, and you're leading her astray even though you think you're telling her the truth. See, these are other things that get avoided when you do things the right way. The right way. Now, a guy asked me, he said, well, how can I know that? And I said, well, look, if you walk by her and she throws up on your shoes, that's a pretty good clue. This is not the girl. She's not that interested in you. But the idea is, you don't have to draw that close to her. You watch her. You pray about her. You know the testimony. Everyone has a testimony. You hear people talking. You can see her godliness, because you have to be very, very careful. Girls, you have to be very, very careful. If you're a godly girl and somehow it gets out that you're interested in a guy and he thinks that you're really beautiful, he'll jump through hoops for a beautiful girl. He'll change the way, superficially, he'll seem to change his character, he'll change his way of life and absolutely everything else until he has you. And I want to tell you something, parents sometimes are just, I use this word when I teach parents, you're just so dumb, just so naive. Look at what I hear. I hear this all the time. Okay, this girl starts going out with a guy, and he's not a Christian. And so her parents put a lot of pressure on her, and Maybe people in the church put pressure on her, and finally she goes to him and goes, look, I can't be with you anymore because you're not a Christian and everything, and it's just not right, it shouldn't be unequally yoked. Man, inside of a week, this guy gets converted. I've seen it happen 1,000,000 times. He gets converted. And then everybody goes, okay, it's all right now. That evangelicals could have such lack of discernment is beyond me. It just tells me that a bunch of us are lost. It's not okay right now. Maybe it'll be okay after a couple of years of him walking with God and growing to be a man of God. Okay? Okay, another question? Yes. Great question. One of the things I said is that a man needs to be able to economically care for his wife, his family. Okay, now, here's something. Because of the way our society is set up, in which, you go to high school, they cram, into 4 years, they cram about a year of learning. You go to college, it's basically the same thing. Fluff, it just keeps you going. So that you can't even think about functioning as a man, even though you have the character of a man. You can't even hardly even think about it until you're 24. And that's a problem with our culture. But here's one of the things that I think that we need to look at. For example, I know a couple right now, and they're both in college. They got another year and a half. They're going to get married. Man, it's pretty slim, and they're courting right now. And I mean, his parents do help him some in his schooling and things like that. And yet, it's okay what they're doing. I think it's right in the center of God's will. Why? Because this young man and this young woman have shown, they have demonstrated in the context that they're in, their maturity. Now, the fact that their parents want to help them a little bit, and they need that help, and it allows the young man to study more so he can get out quicker and things like that, that's okay. Because they've already, in the totality of their life, they have shown maturity, and they have shown that they are headed in the right direction. Without a doubt, they're headed in the right direction. You see what I'm saying? And the guy has assumed the responsibility. He works hard and everything else. The fact of the matter is, it's just difficult. But I mean, when you look at him, you see, man, this is a man. You look at her, this is a virtuous woman. So that's what you're looking for. Any other question?